What is going on, friends? Welcome back to another episode of Fuel Friday, where me and my good friend Dr. Harrison, we break down a topic in 15 minutes or less that we think is going to help you build your happiest, healthiest life. Dr. Harrison, what's up, man? What's the topic
The,
today?
the topic is the continuation after you reminded me what we were talking about, and we ended on fecal transplants, if I remember right.
We sure did. We sure did. So last episode, this is our first two-parter. It's so good. We're talking a lot about gut health and the microbiome and these essentially these bugs is what you mentioned that live inside of us that help us with our immune health, our gut, our digestion, like all these things. And all of our systems kind of start in the gut here. And so we were talking about if these bugs, if you don't have a variety of them, it can really mess things up as far as how you're digesting food and how you're processing things, like all these different things. And you were talking about certain supplements and certain dietary guidelines that could kind of help build those things up. So if you're wanting to go back and hear those things, it's really great to start there. And it kind of got me to the question because it wasn't too long ago that I listened to a podcast and they were talking about how people nowadays, if you have this, if there's a person who has this healthy gut, this healthy microbiome, this variety that you're talking about,
Mhm.
you can actually do, I guess it would be a pill, a capsule of their fecal matter, their feces, their literal poop, and you could take it and it would help grow your microbiome. So I'm
Yeah,
curious if
you're,
you've heard
you're
anything about this or
you're talking about a suppository or actually like an oral?
I don't know. I just had heard
Oh
this on
yeah,
a
yeah.
podcast.
The
So I'm
only
I'm
yeah.
asking you how this
Oh,
works
yeah,
and
the only thing I've ever seen, and now there's databases of people online
Mhm.
that actually are offering their poop, their
Uh-huh.
their fecal, and it's put in, it's semi-processed or semi-refined, if you will, and where it's a suppository, so you're putting it in the colon, and
Hmm.
then you help starting to seed. So the idea is, the idea is that if you have a healthy individual with a healthy biome, you can have a fecal transplant, and it isn't FDA approved, so it's kind of like black market stuff still. There have been some trials. In fact, I was working for a doctor in Minneapolis. This is years and years and years ago, and I don't know, a long enough time ago, 18 years ago, maybe. No, 12, 15. Anyway, um, and we were getting referrals from Mayo Clinic, and we had one of the, and it was a child. It was a 4 or 5 year old. We had one of the very first cases, who had the trial of, in that part of the U.S., of fecal transplant.
Hmm.
And the child had lots of congenital issues like born birth defects and internal organ problems,
Wow.
and we were working from a functional medicine standpoint a little bit, mostly with the mom. It was just an investigation, what else could be done, and genetic stuff, all that stuff. And I asked the mom, I asked her, so how was it? Like, what did you see in your child before and after the fecal transplant? And she said, my child is a completely different child. Like
Wow.
within a week. It was a massive transformation. There was sleep, there wasn't the crying, there wasn't the fussing, there was an appetite, and this child was in a very, very, very bad place. So it's powerful. It's powerful. And then there's also been some interesting cases where, and there were we were able to isolate, not we, but organizations have been able to isolate what bacterial strains are closely associated with weight gain, which is really interesting
Wow.
stuff. Yeah. So it happened by accident. It actually happened by accident. So there was this kind of open platform fecal exchange, if you will. And this lady had a fecal transplant, or sorry, she had a donor,
Hmm.
and used it, and she, something got mixed up, right? So when these things
Hmm.
aren't organized, something got mixed up, and they found out that, and she just started to gain a crazy amounts of weight, like literally in a month, and then it just kept going on for like 8 months. Like her body completely changed. She didn't recognize herself. We're talking we're talking she had normal body composition and she was over 120 pounds overweight within
Wow.
a year. Yeah. And then they
Pretty
tracked it.
significant.
Yeah, then they tracked it down and found out that the donor was morbidly obese. And they're like, whoa. And then they saw another case like this, and then another case, and they're like, well, we got to figure this out. So they were actually able to identify certain strains of bacteria that in the colon that are closely associated with weight gain.
So you're
Close.
saying it's not bacteria that's missing that's causing the weight gain. It's that they had this particular bacteria that is causing it. So I
In this
guess,
case, yeah, in this
yeah. So I
case,
guess my question is, because what is this bacteria? What would it be doing to inhibit would you know that yet, or is it still too
I don't,
early to
yeah,
know?
I don't know enough about it. If we think of the functions of biome,
Hmm.
they it's more than just breaking down foods and maintaining walls. It's the absorption of nutrients, but it's more than that. There's hormone signaling, so we think maybe there's a mechanism there, glucagon and insulin and all of these hormones that help regulate blood sugar metabolism and energy metabolism.
Yeah,
And so we don't know enough, but we do know the bugs are are usually part of the physiological steps from one process to another process. It's not
yeah.
just
And
the
that's
bugs
really
are
and
part of it.
it's
Yeah.
really interesting because I'm sure a lot of the viewers might be seeing this from my point of view. When I think of these bugs and these bacteria and what we had talked about last week, I'm thinking like they're helping eat these things. They're helping protect, right? But
And they do.
w-
Yeah, they do. They
right.
do.
But from what you just told me is that there's this other step in there, and they're actually, as far as promoting certain functions or inhibiting certain functions or this. So there's these bad or this good, and how fragile, like you were saying, this ecosystem really is, that if you get the wrong strands or this isn't present or what these things do, that it could mess everything
Oh
up.
yeah, or even the wrong proportion. So maybe so what happened with this research did is they were able to because they were able to find these bacterial strains or these patterns that were associated with weight gain, they were able to isolate bacterial strains that promote weight loss.
Yeah.
So the nutraceutical companies got all over this, and now there's a few companies, I can't remember the strains. There's a few different varieties of it that in the research is bulletproof, that it plays a significant role in weight loss. And I have them in my clinic. I don't know what exact strains they are. I use them once in a while when we have really
Yeah.
tough weight case. And it's, I don't just do that. So I really don't know what the triggers are, what's contributing to weight loss when they're doing it. I don't do just
Yeah.
one thing, but it's part of the formula. It's part
So
of the formula.
So
Yeah.
again, this is very one piece to a much larger puzzle.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
if we could figure out this strain or these couple strains or whatever it is, and we could just, because some people are just missing the strains altogether, and if we were to able to put those strains in there and feed them the things that they need on a regular basis so they can grow and thrive in your microbiome, then ideally, here's my question for you. Do you
Mhm.
think that as far as like our metabolism and our thyroid is affected, do you think some people are just born with those strains versus not based on their parents passing? Because I assume a lot of your genetic biome would have to come from your parents, right? Like
Yeah,
that's
well,
it would be passed down.
definitely. It actually starts. We believe it starts when the baby is not yet born, but the mom's
Hmm.
carrying around the baby. Her stress responses and everything, just emotional responses, will affect the biome of the baby. The
Yeah.
baby doesn't have much of a biome. It's sharing with the mom mostly. But then when the baby goes through the birth canal, if it's a C-section, they literally the baby inhales a bunch of bacteria coming through the birth canal. This is sounds gross, and maybe it is, but it's critical
Hmm.
for biome development in the baby because the baby comes through the birth canal and it should take in a bunch of this. A baby has weird poop,
Hmm.
alien poop, because the baby has leaky gut. I don't know if we
Yeah.
talked about this. A
We
baby has
haven't.
leaky gut when it's a baby. This is why baby
Right.
poop is weird. So when they take in the bacteria crosses the gut blood barrier because that barrier is not sealed up yet. And that is the purpose of leaky gut. So there's a physiological purpose to it. So the bloodstream gets exposed to the bacteria of the world. So the bloodstream can get primed of what enemies are in that environment, and you can build your immune system.
Yeah.
So when people have episodes of leaky gut, episodes, that can actually be a physiological response So that irritates the intestinal lining. So the immune system gets awareness of what the human has been consuming if it's a bad food, and then the blood builds up antibodies to that bacteria in the environment to save the human.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
so the baby is not born via C-section. They don't get that bacteria coming in. They
Hmm.
don't prime their immune system, and forever, a baby born through C-section will never have the same bacterial diversity as one born via C-section for the rest of their lives.
Wow. That's
Crazy.
crazy.
And I
So,
don't know the numbers. I think it's 30% or more. No,
yeah.
it's more than 30% of
So
all babies born C-section in the United States.
this
I don't
is this has just opened up a whole other door. Then we have to might
know.
have a part
Part
three to
three.
this. So I want to take a step back from the microbiome, and we get this from our parents, but we also get it from our environment, like you just said, the
Mhm.
leaky gut and the environment and stuff like that. And we have these strands that are directly correlated with, weight loss or somebody who is maybe in a healthy weight range or not gaining weight like crazy versus our genetics, right? Like the genetic potential of like some people are just born with faster metabolisms or a better
Right.
thyroid or things like that. Do you think that those two things are correlated, right? Like, do you think that the microbiome would affect how well the thyroid is working or things like that, or vice versa? Or is it just like, again, a small piece to a bigger puzzle? It's hard just to say this one thing.
Yeah, it's definitely a small piece to a bigger puzzle. But if anybody has, these systems are all linked. So if somebody has uh, GI problem for whatever the reason, biome diversity, whatever, there's going to be more strain on the, say, the thyroid to try to
Hmm.
compensate. And it's just not going to do it. It's
Yeah.
just not going to do it. And as we get older, and I say older, over 35, every system in the body is going to be a little more challenged. So everything's got to be pulling its own weight.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, but yeah, the biome. I don't think there's actually there's no field of medicine that hasn't recognized the biome as being part of the story. There's no
Yeah.
field of medicine in research and practice, like cardiologists, they don't care about the gut. Neurologists don't care about the gut, which they should, because anything happens
Hmm.
to the gut is going to influence the brain and even show up on an MRI. But it's just not practiced that way, right? So,
Yeah, 100%. So
mhm.
this is going to get us into a new avenue, but we're running out of time. My
I
my
was wondering
question,
about our
my
time.
we got 2.5 minutes because I was going to go into like this whole our immune function and as a society and what we were just talking about. But I have to ask you because you kind of, and I'd never even heard of this before, but last week you said, "Oh, we also have to talk about camel milk," and I was like, "What?"
Briefly,
So
camel milk.
tell,
So yeah, I don't want to
tell
go
me
too
about
far.
that. Tell me about that.
What we're learning about camel milk, which is kind of fun, really fun, I think it is when people have a lot of food sensitivities. So this isn't exclusively like a biome component, but if people are asking questions about gut biome and food sensitivities, what we're seeing is camel milk, because it closely represents human breast milk. And humans, even adults, can handle human breast milk. But humans have not fully adapted to handle cow's milk because the shape of the protein of cow's milk, imagine imagine this pen, or so this video or whoever's, imagine you're looking at a pen. Imagine the shape of the pen is the shape of breast milk. And our immune system only recognizes something as a friend or a foe by the shape of the protein. Okay,
Mhm.
so imagine this is the shape, this pen is the shape of breast milk. Okay, enter cow dairy. My computer mouse. That's the shape of cow dairy. It's very different than breast milk. So
Mhm.
over the centuries, we or not many centuries, we adapted to cow's milk quite a bit, but it's
Yeah.
abnormal, but not perfectly. Okay, so we can have reactions to this, but when we ferment certain dairies and things like that, we can get great food for a bacterial species. But then we get camel dairy. So you got cow dairy, which is way out there. It's like abnormal. And then you get closer and closer. Then you get goat dairy. Goat dairy is a little bit closer to human breast milk. So a lot of kids, they can't handle cow dairy, but they can handle goat cheese and stuff
Yeah.
like that. And then you get even closer. And the closest that we know of, that I'm aware of yet, is camel dairy. Camel dairy is the closest that we see to breast milk. So people who have dairy allergens, they can handle camel dairy, and not only handle it, but we're seeing camel dairy get rid of food sensitivities a lot in a lot of people, not everybody, and we think it's stimulating the biome in a way that's helping you, diversify. Yeah, there we
Yeah.
go.
Well,
So
so I gotta and on this last question, so we can bring closure to all of this. So people who have food sensitivities and or because we can answer both, the microbiome, they're having those issues we talked about in the last video. Would at least trying to do camel milk be a good direction to see if it starts fixing things?
yeah, yeah, you don't need much. You only need about 1 to 2 ounces a day. So depending where
Wow.
what part of the world you live in, here even in Colorado, there's herds of camels. Like I think there's a herd in Arizona. There's
What?
some in Boulder. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
there was a few in Boulder, and they sold the milk, but you only need 1 to 2 ounces a day. It's very rich, and it's not like you're gonna have it with your cereal or something like that.
Yeah.
It's
I
therapeutic.
want to try this, man. I'm like interested. I want to try some camel's milk, man. Well, Dr. Harrison, I really appreciate you being here. For everybody who's listening, please, we do this just because we love doing it, but we only have one ask. That's you share the episode, whether you're listening on a podcast or watching on YouTube. Just hit that subscribe button, share, and other than that, we'll see you guys next week.